Hello, AIM ladies. Great to be back with you for another night of talking through Mama Bear apologetics together. Hopefully this study has been helpful to you and beneficial. Today we're going to be covering two chapters, so we're speeding up a little bit, but the two chapters are really closely intertwined. They make a lot of sense together, so they fit. They're not completely separate ideas. And the two ideas that we're going to talk about are postmodernism and moral relativity. Postmodernism, moral, big ideas, but they really fit. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. So hopefully you had a chance to read. I know it was a bit more reading than normal, but let me just give you a quick overview of some of the big ideas and help bring them home a little bit. First of all, we've already talked a little bit about modernism and pre-modernism, and we talked about naturalism. Pre-modern was the era of the world when everything was an angel or a demon. We didn't understand how things worked, and anytime something was confusing, we just assumed the gods were doing it. Modernism was the ushering in the 16th century or so of believing that humans should focus on reason and knowing things and actual, does this make sense? Is this true? It became like, don't believe it unless you can prove it. And that was the idea of naturalism. All this stuff came in. That lasted up until about the middle of this last century. And then there started to become a shift. We went from pre-modern to modern. And eventually we started to develop into what became a post or after modernism. Now here's what is at the heart of postmodernism. The idea that number one, you should only believe what you can know, and that we will know answers to everything, eventually led people to begin to say, wait, is that even true? Is that real? And we thought that if we just got all the right answers and we just trusted in science, everything would work out. But then you have the First and Second World Wars, you have all the craziness of the 50s and 60s, an entire generation of people who are taught we just have truth and we'll know things and that will make everything better. And suddenly it's like, wait, a lot of these people were just lying to us. A lot of these people were just trying to control us. They were just telling us truth. They were just telling us that if we just love our country and nationalism and go fight in wars for it, everything will be good. They're just telling us that if we obey all the rules, if we follow the corporate structures, our lives, and it's like, it really wasn't turning out to be so great. And so you started to develop a mindset in the last 40 or 50 years among people saying, wait a second, maybe we shouldn't just accept everything as true. Maybe sometimes people are saying things are true and they're not. And rather, they're actually just trying to control us. And this whole era of skepticism began to seep in, where instead of being like, we're going to find the truth, you started having questions of, can we find the truth? Does anyone actually know what's true? And some of the key philosophers of the 60s and 70s and 80s, like Jacques Derrida, started saying things like, anyone who's claiming something is absolutely true is probably just trying to control you. They're just trying to tell you it's true in order to get you to do what they want to do. It's all fake news. This became what is now known as postmodernism. Postmodernism is a mindset or a philosophy, a way of looking at the world that basically says this: whether or not something is actually true doesn't matter because you'll never know. We can't really know what's true. All truth that we talk about is subjective. And these were the two big words from your book were objective versus subjective. To say something is objectively true is to say it's obvious, it's plain, it is. 2 + 2 is 4. If I take two things and two things, I have four things. That is objectively true. Subjectively true means it's really how you see things. If I say kale is horrible, most rational human beings agree, but we still have to acknowledge that that's not objectively true. It's just it's kind of my viewpoint, how I feel, my preference. And in many ways, I would say this: subjective truth isn't really true. It really is more opinions or preferences. But what postmodernism does is it says all truth, anything that people say is true, is really just their opinion, it's their point of view, it's their slant, and so you shouldn't always accept it or trust it. Nobody really absolutely knows truth. We can't find it, so stop pretending like you have it because you're probably just doing that to control me. That is postmodernism, and that is the world that you and I live in. Most of you watching this video are probably around my age or younger. We were raised in postmodernism, so that's how we see the world. It's how we think. It's how we rationalize. And a lot of us like, yeah, true. We question everybody, any news channel or any scientist. You're just trying to control me. You just have an agenda. That is the heart of postmodernism, questioning everything. So the message of postmodernism is that truth is relative. All truth is relative. So decide for yourself. Since we can't really know, whatever you think, that's fine. Which is a very interesting way of looking at the world, isn't it? Objective truth doesn't exist. We can't get our hands on it. Everything is just your opinion. So, yeah, whatever you think is fine must be fine, is really where we've landed. Because that's where postmodernism leads. At the end of the day, no one knows for sure. All your fighting and wars and arguing over who's right haven't led to anything good. We've just been killing each other and whatever. So, the most reasonable and rational thing to do is just accept that we can't really know anything's true and just live our lives, and whatever you think is good for you. That is why in our postmodern society, the greatest good, the most important thing is not what is true. Truth isn't the most important thing. What's become the most important thing is tolerance. Because at the heart of tolerance is, well, we don't know what's true. So whatever you think is good for you, go ahead and do that. And what we need to do is we need to tolerate each other's truths. Whatever's true for you, I'll tolerate that. Whatever's true for me, you tolerate for me. Tolerance is simply part of a postmodern world. When nobody knows what is true and nobody accepts anything as absolutely true, the most important thing is that we all just have our own truths and tolerate each other. Whatever you want, go for that. So figure it out for yourself, decide for yourself, and what's true for you, let that be true. Live your truth. Let you be you. This means people can be okay with your viewpoint. And you can be like, I believe this is true. And someone can say, yeah, okay, I think that's true for you. Which on one hand feels like, wait, no, I just think it's, yeah, I think that's true for you. How do you, welcome to postmodern. That's our world. That's what our kids are being raised in. It's what a lot of us were raised in. That a viewpoint or an opinion has been elevated to the level of truth because that's all we've got. Everything is opinion. And because everything's opinion, let's not fight about it. Let's just let everyone live their own truths. So let's talk about what's good about that, because there is some good in postmodernism. And first of all, one of the good things about postmodernism is that some truths are power claims. Some people do claim to have something is true in order to influence and get their agenda across. And we, as we've talked about many times in this study, we don't want to raise kids who just accept everything is true because someone says it's true. We want them to be skeptical and critical because a lot of people are saying things that are lies, and I don't want my kids living lies. I don't want to live a lie. So postmodernism has challenged us a little bit to say, hold on, let's just not accept everything. Just because someone's a scientist and says it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Science has an agenda, right? Again, COVID has taught us that. Postmodernism tells us to be skeptical of people claiming things are true before we have good reason to believe it, and to look behind, why is someone saying this? Does this person have an agenda? I would say postmodernism is what led us to our current view of journalism, the media. Oh, the media is biased, right? That's a postmodernist way of viewing, of actually thinking those people that are writing those articles and posting them or getting on news channels and saying it, they have an agenda. They're not just giving me unbiased information. So let's think about it. Let's process it. And in some ways, that's not a bad thing because a lot of people do have agendas. So postmodernism is part of being a healthy person who thinks about, is this true or is this not true? Also, postmodernism has helped Christianity a little bit in the sense that it's kind of challenged us to see beyond the person on the stage with the nice suit saying it's true and just being like, okay, they said it's true. Postmodern kind of says, well, hold on. Is that true? It forces us to question and maybe think a little bit deeper about things, which isn't a bad thing. It's also caused us to maybe give some validity to other ways of doing things, of realizing that maybe some things that we thought were absolute truths weren't truths. They weren't objectively true. They might have been a little bit more subjectively true. Well, this is how our church does it, and that's true. Well, is that true, or is that just more of a preference or opinion? So there are some good things in postmodernism that teaching us to maybe think beyond. But let me give you some major problems with it if you haven't already grasped them. First, the heart of the whole thing is distrust. It's a serious problem to live your life not trusting anyone or anything. We can't function that way. Society can't function that way. And not everyone who wants to speak truth is out to control you. And that's a very dangerous way to live. To assume that everybody's out for bad things. Well, I mean, it's okay to have a healthy dose of skepticism, but coming to the place that you think everyone is lying is no way to live your life. And in fact, no society can function that way. To assume that someone's always out to control you. And very specifically, as we've already seen, that was the first lie the serpent told humans. God isn't telling you the truth. He's out to control you. What he's telling you is good and evil. What he's telling you is tov and ra. What is good for you and what is bad for you isn't the truth. It's just his opinion he's using to control you. This idea is the same thing that Satan's been telling us for years. So that's a problem. Secondly, the whole idea is based on a self-refuting claim. And what I mean by that is, if it's true that we shouldn't trust any claims that claim to be true, is postmodernism claiming to be true? Is it true that I shouldn't trust anyone telling me what is true? Is that statement true? Well, you just told me not to accept anything as true, so postmodernism shouldn't be accepted as true. The whole thing just kind of unravels. It's really illogical when you think about it. It's based more on feeling and emotion than anything that actually has a concrete base to it. And most importantly, here's where this really hits the road for us and what leads us into the second chapter. If truth can't be known and should always be decided on how you feel or how you see the world, we cannot sustain ourselves as a society. Truth, the very idea of truth is that it corresponds to reality. Truth is not simply what you like or how you feel. That's an opinion. In life, the way that we live, the way we behave has to be based on some kinds of truths. Should I be allowed to just say, well, I don't accept your truth that murder is wrong? What happens if I'm just going to decide truth for myself and all truths are power claims? If you tell me that it's wrong to rape somebody or steal from you, well, if I don't think that's wrong, I'm living my truth, right? How can we actually get along here? Don't there have to be some things that are true? Is it just my opinion about whether my engine in my car is or isn't working? No, there's a truth about whether that car is working. Should we accept the truth of a blind person who says there's no such thing as sight because they don't experience it? We'd say, no, just because you didn't experience it, just because it's not your experience of seeing and sight doesn't mean there isn't a true thing called sight. At the end of the day, there have to be real things in the world. Specifically, as it relates then to our faith and our lives, is this idea of morality. If there's nothing we can know is true, how could we ever say it's true that something is right or wrong? And this is what has led to, what postmodernism has led to in our culture is what your next chapter talks about, moral relativism. Relativism means it's relative. It's if you think so, I think so, whatever, it's up to you. That is the outflow of postmodernism. If there's nothing true that we can build our lives on, and it's all based on opinion, then morality is based on opinion. What is good and what is bad is simply up to you. It's whatever you want. You can't say they're absolutely true. And if you tell me something is wrong or bad, I shouldn't do it, you're just trying to control me. And I shouldn't trust you. I should do whatever I want. The greatest good is tolerance, right? These things go hand in hand. If we can't know truth, and all truth, any claims of truth are just people trying to control you, then we've created a society where you can live however you want and do whatever you want, and I can't tell you differently because we don't know truth, and I'm whatever. But if morality is relative, like truth, how do you ever critique behavior? How do you ever tell someone they shouldn't do this? Who are we to say that murderers are wrong if there's nothing truly wrong about murder? Moral relativism is actually impossible. It's nonsense. We're just pretending. We don't actually live that way, which is so interesting. We want it in some ways, but we don't want it in others. We want to agree that certain things are truly bad, especially when they endanger us or work against us. We're fine with moral relativism until someone breaks into our house and steals from us or threatens to kill us. Then we're like, no, that's bad. Don't do that. Well, is it? Is it bad? So the whole concept of moral relativism and postmodernism and relative truth and subjective truth, all of this stuff is really just based on our feelings. It's based on us being kind of scared or fearful of people telling us what to do because we don't like people telling us what to do. And at its core, Christianity is about God telling you what to do. So the whole thing we're talking about, we're just back at the Garden of Eden. We're just back at Satan trying to tell us not to trust God, not to trust the Bible, not to trust that there's truth, and just do whatever you want to do. But it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It falls apart. So a healthier approach, let me give you a few thoughts here. First, you have to acknowledge that your kids are being raised in a postmodern world. They're going to think like postmodernists. So one of the things we have to be ready for, and this is just true, is we have to be careful with things like the Bible says so. Why is that true? Well, because the pastor said so. The Bible says so. If you don't, your kids will for sure already not want to think that way. It doesn't carry weight the way it did in modern culture. The Bible is not accepted as this ultimate authority because nothing's an ultimate authority. So a healthier approach is to acknowledge that your postmodern kids aren't going to simply want these like this, just believe it because it was said so. We've already talked about that. They're going to need to see the goodness of God as a way that works in their lives, that God is actually out for your benefit, that he's not trying to control you. A healthier approach is to help kids see the rules or the laws or the thou shalts and thou shalt nots of Christianity, not as controls, as forcing you into something, but as ways that God is trying to lead them to good things in life and our society to good things in life. So a healthier approach maybe moves away from always just saying, well, the Bible says so, so shut your mouth. Now, it can be helpful at some point to help your kids come to an understanding that the Bible is authoritative. And we do have to accept that. That's part of faith in Christianity. So another healthier approach is helping move past this lie that says nothing is true. We need to help our kids see that there are things that are true, and the Bible is one of them. Let me give you one more thought. I love the book too. Part of our problem is we also have to be careful. I made this comment a while ago about, we were talking about, witchcraft, the devil, things like that. I talked about it in my podcast this week. When we tell people the devil is in everything, they start to feel like the devil is in nothing. When we tell people that everything is an absolute truth, it leads to questioning if anything is an absolute truth. And what I mean by that is we're really guilty of this in Christianity a lot. We often take our opinions or our preferences and present them to people as absolute truths. No. This is the way things are done. This is truth. And what happens is it can muddy the waters. And I can start to be like, maybe I find out that's not actually true. And then I'm like, well, what else did you tell me that's not true? Confusing preference and opinion with truth is prepping the ground to be fertile soil for postmodernism to grow. The more I confuse my opinions and my preferences with what God has actually said is true. This is how we should sing in church. This is what we should do. This is what a Christian does or doesn't do. This is how we dress. This is the music we listen to. Well, those might be good ideas or good opinions, but are they absolute truths? Be careful with that. Hyper-fundamentalism has led to a lot of what today, this deconstruction, postmodernism, doubting all truth, because hyper-fundamentalism wants to be extreme and claim everything is absolute truth, rather than saying, well, this is our opinion. And that's okay, but they're not necessarily rules, and seeing the difference. So helping kids see the difference between your opinions and what is true will help prep them to not question everything. And then lastly, helping kids see that life can't exist without some things being true. Helping them see past the lie that it doesn't work. We can't function if we don't accept things as true. They want things to be true. When their brother or sister comes into the room and takes their toy and breaks it and says, do something about this, mom and dad, they don't want you saying, oh, there's nothing really right or wrong or true, so your brother's just going to, no, they want their brother and sister to be held accountable. They don't want their sister stealing from them. They want a world of right and wrong. So helping them understand that in the light of what God offers us as humans is so important, the way that Christianity brings that sense of right or wrong, and it's needed and it's valuable. This is a huge challenge. It's a big part of life, raising kids and living in 2022. It's a big reason why our political system is such a mess right now and why the world is constantly fighting, because we don't agree on truth. But as Christians, we believe that we do have the source of truth, and it's God's word. We have to help our kids come to trust it and understand it, to see the goodness of God in it, to see the difference between just my opinion and actual truth. and to understand that it is the best and most healthy way to live. That's part of being a parent raising kids. So hope this was helpful. I know it was a lot. If you have any questions, like I always say, shoot me an email, pete@risechurch.com, and look forward to continuing this conversation together next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye.